Gateway News here with Jim Benson, a concerned citizen who who spearheaded the 2A campaign, an 8% tax, seat tax on events like Rapids and entertainment. Jim Benson is with us today, and he's just going to answer a few questions. Jim, where would this Boys and Girls Club be proposed as a site? Is it talk to me about that.
You know, there are no sites presently proposed. I think that it would be nice if it could go somewhere in the middle of the city so kids all over the city could have access to it, but I don't know exactly where it would go.
You say middle of the city, that's 104th and Chambers. Are you thinking that far north?
I don't look at that as being the middle. I look at maybe the 96th area or somewhere along that Highway 2 as it's going next to the wildlife refuge. It's
okay.
More in the middle. But you're saying 104th and Chambers
is a geographic middle of the city.
Okay, that seems pretty far north to me. That's where I live. But,
right.
It doesn't seem to be the middle of the city to me. But.
Gotcha. Okay, $7 million. That's what the sunset. And there's a sunset. After $7 million, this tax goes away. Talk to me a little bit about $7 million. How is that going to pay for land, building, and running? How does that break down?
Well, we estimated between $4.5 and $5 million to acquire the land and build the building, and then the extra $2 million would be for operating the club at about a clip of $500,000 or $600,000 a year for 2 or 3 years. And then after that, the hope is that some magnanimous organization would step up and take over that obligation to operate the club. But again, we don't know what with the rising cost of construction materials, I don't know that $4.5 or $5 million is going to build the club.
Yeah, recently RTD, is having a huge issue with budgeting. So
about $3 billion short.
That's right. Yeah. So $7 million actually, this isn't gonna happen right away. This is gonna happen. No. What is the timeline for this actually?
Well, what I would envision if this passes and we get the tax and we collect it during 2009, the tax doesn't go into effect until January 1st of 2009, so any tickets that were bought before January 1st, 2009 would not be subject to the tax, regardless of when the event occurs. It's only tickets sold during that time period. But
Jim, what is the timeline here of if this passes to get this going?
All right, if it passes, then this time next year we're going to have a history of what we can collect out of this tax every year. So the plan that I would have would be to go back to the voters in November of '09 at the regular municipal elections for Commerce City and have a bond issue approved. The bonds would be secured solely by this tax, the tax that had already been passed, so it wouldn't increase taxes. It would just be a way of getting the money now up front rather than having to wait 5 or 6 years to accumulate the funds necessary to start construction, because the sooner we start construction, the cheaper it's going to be. You wait 4 or 5 years, the price could double. So we need to get it started as soon as possible. We didn't want to have 2 measures on the ballot this year. So I'm thinking that if it passes next year, we do the tax this year, we do the bonds next year, because we'll have a history in '09 to show to the underwriters, here's what we can collect every year.
Very good. Jim, some of the criticisms basically, you're going to build this Boys and Girls Club if this passes. Why not throw in a rec center for the north, for the kids in the north? This seems like it's catered for the kids in the southern part of the city, and you're missing out on a huge portion, especially when there is no city services in the north at all.
In my original draft, I had another 25 or 30 million for a rec center up north. I wanted to make this issue as narrow as I could. So, okay, we're going to start off with $7 million for a Boys and Girls Club, and then it's going to end. I thought that the way that the issue last year when this was on the ballot was way too broad. It went on forever, and there was no specification on how the money was to be spent, so I wanted to make it as narrow as possible so that we could get it passed. And in the future, if there's no other way to finance a rec center up north, then maybe we can do this and extend this tax to build a rec center in the north. I hope that there's some other way to finance it besides that. But that would be my personal plan. I hope that somebody from the city may wind up agreeing with that. I know that we're talking about a rec center up north. That's going to be a study session coming up in the near future. That's on the that's in our plans to do that as soon as possible.
One of the criticisms is basically that this is only going to support only one nonprofit.
Right.
Do you,
And I'm glad that you used the word nonprofit. That's what the Boys and Girls Club. Boys and Girls Club is not a charity. Our kids are not a charity. They don't need charity, and that's not what we're going to try to give them. We're just going to try to serve them by giving them something to do after school, between the time that school's out and the time that their parents get home for work, to keep them from getting into trouble, I guess, basically, because that's when kids will tend to get into trouble, I guess, about the time that they start into junior high. Of course, the Boys and Girls Club serves from 6th through the 12th grade. Now, okay, this is going to benefit only the Boys and Girls Club. Let's take a look at, so it's a fairness thing, I guess. Let's take a look at fairness. We've got a sales tax that every man, woman, and child in this whole Denver Metro Stadium District pays to build Coors Field and Invesco Field. That's $800 million that every man, woman, and child in this whole Metro Stadium District is paying every time that they buy something. This goes to benefit professional sports franchise owners and players, all of whom are multimillionaires, with the Broncos and the Rockies. That's just the way you get things financed. I mean, they had to do that way in order to get the bonds issued and get the bonds sold and get the bonds underwritten. You have to do it that way, but is that fair? Not necessarily. People are going to be paying for those stadiums who have never been to a game, have no intention of ever going to one of those games, and maybe they can't afford to. How is some guy making $40,000 and maybe has 4 kids ever going to be able to take his kids to a Broncos game at $90 a ticket? He'll never be able to do that, yet he's got to pay sales tax on everything that he buys to build that stadium. And this, people have a choice. If you're going to go to a soccer game, you're going to pay an extra 64 cents. If you're going to go to a drive-in theater, maybe the admission price is $7, you're going to pay an extra 56 cents to get in. And is that going to build a Boys and Girls Club? Is this not something that people can afford to do?